Hello and welcome. Dash TV takes you to the year in retrospect. 2024 has been a year of mixed fortunes for Cameroonians in the political, economic, social, health, as well as sporting domains. We are kickstarting a series of programs on the year in retrospect with politics. In this edition of the program, we shall provide a comprehensive review of the past year as we analyze major events and policy decisions that have shaped the nation over the last 12 months. Why is this political retrospect important? It is important because it enables us to understand the present, informing on the future, as well as promoting civic engagement. This program aims to encourage active participation in the political process and foster informed dialogue among citizens. This explains why we do have two gentlemen who will be throwing their weight as they also analyze the events that took place in Cameroon's political landscape in the course of the year 2024. We shall be taking a short break, and when we come back, we'll introduce to you our panelists. Welcome back. Joining us in this edition of the program is senior journalist and former Unity Palace correspondent. He is Prince Ngomba Ndele. Prince, thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
It's always a pleasure coming to Dash Television. You know, Dash Television is owned by a prominent Boya boy, and I happen to be a Boya boy too, so it's always a pleasure being here.
All right, thank you very much, Prince Ngomba Ndele. Also present here in the studio is Professor Mark Anthony Akumbom. He is a Pan-Africanist as well as political analyst as well as an author. Prof, thank you very much for joining us, and it's a pleasure having you.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the opportunity. I also want to extend a happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year in advance to my fellow panelists, journalist Ngomba Ndele, and to Cameroonians who are actually watching us at this moment.
All right, thank you very much. Without wasting much time, we shall set the ball rolling with a report which captures the major political events of the year. We understand that the year 2024 was marked principally by voters' registration, the internal conflict within the PCRN party of Honorable Cabral Libi. President Paul Biya's long absence out of the country also made news and triggered lots of opinions, not leaving out the kidnap of the deal of YABADOO Ewane Roland, whose whereabouts is still not decided right up till now. At the time when Cameroonians were preparing to celebrate Christmas, a baobab in Cameroon's judicial as well as political landscape quit the scene, and that is nobody else than Honorable Paul Aya Abine, who passed away late 24th December. These stories and more have been compiled by our reporter Jean-Marie Olnambele, who brings to us the developments in the French language. We shall be right back.
L'année 2024 a débuté en trompe avec la réclamation faite par Abdourahmane Amadou Baba qui fustige et réclame à Election Cameroun de produire la liste unique du fichier électoral s'appuyant sur la loi électorale. Après un moment d'explication de l'ECAM et de son directeur général Éric Essoussé, les inscriptions sur les listes électorales ont repris. Une séquence d'inscription qui connaît un franc succès.
Il faut mettre en exergue du point de vue, n'est-ce pas, primordial, la mobilisation qui s'est opérée autour du phénomène des inscriptions sur les listes électorales. On a quand même vu que contrairement aux années passées, il y a eu des avancées significatives sur le terrain en termes du taux d'inscription. Contrairement au passé où ce taux-là oscillait entre 4 et 5%, on a vu quand même que cette année, ce taux-là est allé, n'est-ce pas, en progression, en caracolant 8%.
Le succès des inscriptions sur les listes électorales qui est motivé par une dynamique d'ensemble.
Et cette façon de faire, en réalité, s'explique majoritairement par la participation et la mobilisation de la masse politique qui se sont, n'est-ce pas, ici, engagés en politique et qui ont fait du phénomène politique leur propre affaire. Et il faut aussi dire que cette façon de faire peut aussi s'expliquer avec cette conjoncture internationale de l'environnement international du Cameroun qui a quand même vu dans certains pays des changements politiques opérés et impulsés par le rôle et par le fait de la mobilisation de la jeunesse.
En 2024, pendant que les Camerounais s'inscrivent massivement sur les listes électorales, les partis politiques de l'opposition, eux, sont toujours en conclave pour s'entendre sur une candidature unique de l'opposition. La guerre des coalitions est ouverte.
On a vu comment les alliances et les coalitions sont nées et à travers, par exemple, certains leaders. La coalition dirigée par Ninthieu et la coalition dirigée par Olivier Billet. Tout cela participe des stratégies, n'est-ce pas, de mobilisation et de conquête du pouvoir.
2024 voit une issue favorable pour Cabral Libi et ses supporters qui étaient en bras de fer avec un des fondateurs du Parti camerounais pour la réconciliation nationale concernant la présidence du PCRN. Le haut tribunal de Kaélé va finalement donner raison au camp Cabral Libi qui est souvent conforté et bien positionné pour les élections présidentielles de 2025. Du côté du MRC, le président Maurice Kamto, bien que martelant que son parti ira aux élections dans la paix et par les urnes, fustige certaines autorités qui menaceraient certains de ses partisans. Dans une conférence de presse, Maurice Kamto informe qu'ils ne se laisseront plus faire. Certains qui, eux, ont pris de l'avant, c'est ce groupe de partis politiques et la société civile qui ont intronisé l'ancien bâtonnier Akérémona comme prochain candidat à l'élection présidentielle de 2025 malgré son appartenance à une coalition ATP. 2024 a aussi vu cette polémique autour de la longue absence du chef de l'État Paul Biya. Certains acteurs politiques appelant même le Conseil constitutionnel à observer la vacance au pouvoir.
L'année 2024 a aussi quand même été une occasion de voir le paradigme, voir la dichotomie mort-vie autour de la personnalité du chef de l'État. On a vu cette année se cristalliser au Cameroun une certaine sorte de polarisation entre deux blocs. D'un côté, les partisans du président de la République qui en appellent à sa candidature et qui ont mobilisé les appels à candidature dans ce sens-là, en dépit, n'est-ce pas, de l'aspect naturel du chef de l'État et qui donne à voir les signes de fatigue et de la vieillesse. Et certaines personnes, en réalité, prenant en considération, n'est-ce pas, cet aspect-là, sont même allés jusqu'à convoquer le paradigme, n'est-ce pas, divin de la longévité du chef de l'État à la tête de l'État, en disant que ça peut aussi être une bénédiction de Dieu de bénéficier d'une telle façon de faire. De l'autre côté, on a quand même eu l'opinion critique et la plus grande majorité des populations et même des citoyens qui, eux, ne voyaient pas les choses dans ce sens-là et qui pensaient que le président de la République était aussi fatigué et pour continuer, n'est-ce pas, la direction des destinées du Cameroun. C'est ainsi qu'il y a eu, n'est-ce pas, des rumeurs sur sa disparition, sur sa mort et même sur sa longévité, n'est-ce pas, de sa visite à l'étranger.
Une polémique sur la longue absence du chef de l'État qui sévit au moment où le président Paul Biya était invité à prendre la parole en France au nom des leaders africains à la célébration des 80 ans du débarquement en Normandie. Le chef de l'État qui a aussi brillé par sa présence au sommet Chine-Cameroun où il lui a été aussi donné de prendre la parole. L'année 2024 a aussi été marquée par quelques inclusions des terroristes dans la zone anglophone du pays. Le kidnapping du sous-préfet d'YABADOO restant comme un acte fort de ces derniers.
L'année 2024 a quand même donné de constater la persistance et même l'insistance de la crise anglophone. On a vu quand même qu'en dépit des efforts faits par le gouvernement, cette crise-là perdure et insiste, avec des conséquences néfastes sur le déplacement des populations, mais aussi et surtout l'accentuation de la misérabilité et de la pauvreté dans cette localité.
2024 est marqué par la disparition de quelques figures fortes de la scène politique camerounaise, notamment des membres des partis politiques, du Sénat, du bureau politique du RDPC et de l'Auguste Chambre. Des élus de la nation qui ne siégeront pas dans le nouveau siège de l'Assemblée nationale, fruit de la coopération sino-camerounaise inaugurée en cette année 2024. Un des plus grands coups politiques et diplomatiques à mettre à l'actif du président de la République Paul Biya est le choix de notre compatriote Philemon Yang qui a présidé aux destinées de la 79e Assemblée générale de l'Organisation des Nations Unies. Vivement 2025.
Nambele for compiling the major political events of the year 2024 and giving us a starter for us to begin breaking down some of the major developments. Let's kickstart with the voter registration exercise, which ended on the 31st of August 2024. At the end of the voter registration exercise, the Elekam board chair Eno Abrahams Ebre revealed that 755,085 new voters were enrolled into the electoral register, which also included about 8,000 Cameroonians from the diaspora. He highlighted that the initial target of 650,000 people was surpassed, but we all understand that the voter registration exercise was very dramatic this year for obvious reasons due to problems between Elekam and various stakeholders. Prince, what is your take about the voter registration process with everything that happened?
I think it's a normal process. I don't know. I don't quite understand the hype around that exercise. It's a normal exercise, and it has to do with getting younger people into the decision making of voting. So for me, it's a normal exercise, and I'm glad to hear that a lot more people got registered than was the idea. Because for me, what is important is what you eventually do with their votes, and not getting them registered.
All right, Prof. We understand that we are on the eve of elections. Do you think that the problems that we saw along the registration process, the conflicts and problems, Elekam and some stakeholders, Abdurrahman calling for the publication of the entire list as it's supposed to be, with Elekam first of all refusing, and then Elekam came back on its word and published it, can that be ascribed to the current political climate on the eve of elections?
Thank you for that question. I actually want to say that in Cameroon we have actually been living, let me say, in a kind of box where things are done in darkness, and we are used to. But unfortunately, we are claiming that Cameroon is an advanced democracy. And that is actually dangerous in itself. You see, we intend to see Cameroon actually become that advanced democracy, not based on slogans made by politicians, but let it be a reality on the ground. Looking at the idea of voters registration, we appreciate that this year there was an increase, but unfortunately, I was shocked that at the end of the day, a lot of persons were rejected. Claiming, in fact, the claim was so stupid in itself, claiming that they lack their finger imprints.
Yeah, the finger imprints.
So just imagine the reason why individuals were rejected. Was it their fault?
And this brings the question: how could they have registered without their finger imprints?
So you see a kind of political maneuver, and you get to realize that we actually do not intend to advance. Because I think if that body is actually independent, as it is claimed to be, there's a lot that they would have been able to do to favor the political climate of the nation. But playing this kind of game, registering some, refusing some, and then at the same time not being available everywhere, because you'll be shocked to know that the moment you leave Douala and you enter into the suburbs, Lekam is not available. They don't have offices everywhere. There are certain divisions where, for example, in the main capital, let me say in the capital town,
of the division,
they find themselves there.
But in the suburbs,
subdivisions and villages, they are nowhere to be found. So if people need to register, they need to leave villages, pay transport to those capital towns. But that becomes problematic in itself. It means they do not want to register the people. That is why you hear that Cameroon is made of over 30 million persons in population, but we have just about 3 million people who go voting every year, every time there is an election. Is that not disturbing? How can a country of close to 30 million people allow 3 million persons to decide for them who becomes their president? And that is why, as an individual, I still keep on calling on Cameroonians. Please, even if it means you have to pay that transport to go and register, do it. And even if it means that at the end of the day, they will tell you your imprint was the reason why you were rejected, still do it. I think very soon they will be opening.
On the 1st of January.
It is problematic that we have a body like that, which is actually lacking in their job. We need Elekam to rise up, to do something for the good of Cameroonians. Cameroonians need a good job from them.
But now let's look at the role of the population themselves, Prince. We all understood that in the course of the year, there were various initiatives aimed at encouraging Cameroonians to register, but not up to 1 million people finally got registered. In terms of the mobilization, what was your impression about that?
I'll come back to what I said earlier. The voter apathy that we see is related to the fact that people who've been voting all along do not seem to realize or to see the effect of their vote on the political landscape of the country, which is dominated by the ruling party and the people who are in place. And Elekam is also considered. If you look at the people who are in Elekam, they are most of the times associated with former members of the ruling party. So this creates a sort of apathy. People just believe that their votes won't count. And that's why they don't even bother to register. And now, the involvement of opposition parties, you can understand. They are trying to tell their people this time around that it matters to register and that it might help change the situation. Because if not, it's going to be the status quo maintained, and that is probably the problem. But if this time around Cameroonians can get their votes, because as I said earlier, what is important is the results, what they do with their votes. It's not just registering. Registration now looks to me like a mere formality. But now, if at the end of the day,
they have to partake in the process and ensure that
that their vote counts.
That their vote counts.
Then we will have a meaningful exercise.
2025 is coming. Before we leave the voter registration exercise, how crucial can that exercise be for an election year in Cameroon?
I think it's very, very important, considering the fact that we believe that your vote is your voice. And considering that a lot of Cameroonians have been under the cloud of voters apathy, coming from the fact that those who were voting before actually were not making any difference. You see, I was speaking with some university students and encouraging them to go and register. And I think that young lady who made that statement was, I think she was 21. I encouraged her to go register. She said, we have been voting for a long period of time and
nothing is changing.
I looked at her, I asked her, how old are you? So how long have you been voting? Have you ever voted before? She said, even if I'm not the one, those who are voting before, I said, see, that's where there's a problem. We don't claim that we have been voting when in reality, we have never even gone to vote. And I actually took that statistic. If we have 30 million Cameroonians all registered with their voters' cards in their hands, I don't think 2-point-something million people would determine who is the winner of an election. Because if you remember in 2018, 2-point-something million people determine who became the president of Cameroon.
Yeah.
Is that not sickening? Who is to be blamed? Cameroonians, not the ruling party. Because if you look very well, you know, some people said they have been rigging elections. I said, no, we have been rigging elections. Cameroonians are rigging elections.
It's a collective responsibility.
Yes. We refuse to go and vote. We refuse to even register. Then at the end of the day, we blame the ruling party. I'm not of the ruling party. But if you look at it, their machinery on the ground plays the part of discouraging Cameroonians from going to register. If you look very well, last time the minister even, when young people were being encouraged to go and vote, to go and register, the Minister of Territorial Administration mentioned it. He kind of said it is not by force that people need to go register. That statement in itself was a means to say, okay, it means when people are not registering is good. That to me, I see it as a problem. So I want to say that Cameroonians have been rigging election, not the ruling party as people claim. We have been rigging the election by refusing to go and vote. So I want to say, Cameroonians, next year is election year. If we want to make a difference, then it is time for each and every one of us to rush to register. If you have not done it, I think if we have over 15 million people registered, it will create a greater impact. And vote, because it's not about registration. Because currently we have 8 million and roughly about 3 million go to the polls. So what happens to the rest of the 5 million Cameroonians? There were 6 million, according to Elect Cameroon, were registered before. Yes. And just about 3 million used to go and vote. Yeah. That was because of voters' apathy. But if you look, there is a wind of change. There's an increase in desire for young Cameroonians who want to see a change. Yeah. If you see, there's a young man that was arrested last time and locked up. Yes. Because he went on social media encouraging young Cameroonians to go and register. Can you see that? And he made a statement that 2025 should not be like every other year. It is either by hook or by crook. It's enough. And he said enough is enough. We need to take our own destiny into our hands. If you see young people getting involved in this issue, then it means something is happening. And so I think it is very important that we go register. First, that's the first aspect. When you register, you have that voter's card. The next thing is to determine who will be your leader. We should stop complaining and saying that the present governance leadership is bad and this. When we choose to fold our arms, then we are the ones encouraging the bad governance at the same time. So I think we should take responsibility. First, go and register. Have your voter's card. Then prepare for the voters for the elections. Yeah. That is more important than sitting and saying that nothing is going to change. Cameroon has been like this. And so what? If we remain like that, we will be the ones to suffer. Our children will suffer. So I think it is time for young Cameroonians to take up this challenge. Go and register. In fact, do you know about 50% or say 60% of this nation is made of youth? Yeah, over 70%. We are even talking of over 70%. Over 70%. If we have over 70% youths, then we have, in fact, I don't want to use the word
older people, we have our grandparents leading us. I mean, there is a problem. We are the ones who have permitted that to happen. So let us choose youths to also lead. I think it is time for the youths to take this responsibility. It is not the ruling party. It is that of Cameroonian youth. Take the responsibility.
All right, still talking about the pre-electoral business in Cameroon. 2024 was marked by the creation of alliances, of course, that were dissolved by the Ministry of Territorial Administration. In a statement on March 12, 2024, Paul Atanganji described the Alliance for Political Transition as well as the Alliance for Change. Those were two groups that were created at the start of the year to begin mobilizing for elections. The minister termed them as illegal across the national territory. He even went ahead to condemn the meeting between Jean-Michel Nincho and Sisi Kwayo Tabe at the Kondengi prison in Yaoundé, and highlighted that these political coalitions remain outlawed because they have not been accepted according to the law. Atanganji revealed that only political parties themselves have the right to organize political meetings. Despite criticisms from Jean-Michel Nincho and Olivier Billet, the activities of these political coalitions in the build-up to the 2025 elections have been very timid, if not inexistent, since the outing of Paul Atanganji. Prince Gombaindele, what reading do you make of that?
I think we are reading a lot of meaning into administrative acts which do not have a direct bearing on the political outcomes on the field. We have two glaring examples to guide Cameroonians. There is what happened in Senegal and what happened in the United States of America. In both cases, people mobilized against the status quo. They mobilized against the institutions and made their voices heard. In Senegal, for instance, the people who are the head of the country now, the president and his prime minister, were both young people who were in jail. They were in jail. But they mobilized the population.
And they were released a few weeks before the election.
And they won the elections. And they've taken over and are now running the country. In the United States of America, President-elect Donald Trump made it clear to Americans that if they wanted their country back, that is, if the citizens wanted control of their country, they should vote for him. His project was making America great again. Which implies that America was no longer great. So for me, the political language and the political modus operandi is more important than administrative acts. The minister is an administrator. He can sign his decrees and sign his orders in line with his job and his job description. For me, even if they are good or bad, that doesn't really matter. So people should mobilize themselves. At the end of the day, the voice of the people is what counts.
Which means the political parties themselves have to take the responsibility.
That is it. And they have to accept that they failed. And they failed all along. And that is why one party dominates the political scene in Cameroon. Now, they are not prepared to accept that in terms of their methods, they failed, they will fail again. Now, they have to change their approach to things. And from the way I see things going, I wonder if they will change. Because the same people, the same names you've been mentioning, today they are in SDF, the next day they are in another party, today they are insulting one leader, the next day they are boycotting elections. It's confusion down the line. You see, in Senegal, for instance, the actual prime minister, Sonko, was the one who was at the head of the mobilization and the head of his party. But he was slammed by administrative measures, and he couldn't stand. And he put his assistant, who stepped in and won, just to show you that it is a mechanism that had been put in place that matters, not people. And we in Cameroon, we are still into this people, this great men approach, great personality.
That is it. We will be coming to that with the PCRN, yeah, personality court.
Yes, so those in the opposition, they have to review their methods and make sure that they mobilize the people. Mobilization is what matters. It's not infighting and deciding from which village the head must come from.
All right, Prof, what was your take on that? These political coalitions, Alliance for Political Transition and Alliance for Change by Ninche and Olivier Billet, when they started, they had so much momentum, but apparently they just fizzled out, you know, after Atanganji came out.
They were intimidated. They were intimidated. But I want to say that you don't form coalitions might be towards an election. You form coalitions years. I think from the time President Biya won election in 2018, the next thing that would have happened that same year,
yeah,
after they have done their re-evaluation, evaluated their activities, then they would have sat down and said, no, let us create a coalition for the next election. That would have been close to 7 years in preparation. But what happens? You don't sit, then you wait. During the last day, you come and tell us that you are creating a coalition. That's fake.
And even the modalities of belonging to these coalitions divided some of the members.
First of all, even look at the way Nietzsche was writing letters and sending. I mean, he even sent one to PCRN, to Cabral.
Yeah, to Cabral.
You are inviting them as if they are your children, and you have already chosen who should be the champion. There's a problem. If you look at their reasoning, it tells you that they do not even believe in what they are doing. They don't have any strategy. There is no plan. So even though we are asking Cameroonians to actually take their destiny into their hands, at the same time we are asking the question, the political players,
the political players,
what are they doing? Can they actually help these young people transition? Can we arrive where we want to go to? So we have a serious problem in that it seems as if everything is vague. In fact, it's bleak, let me use that word. We can't see the future. So I want to say, you don't form coalitions at the last minute. And even the idea of forming a coalition should not be a decision of an individual. And secondly, you don't make, you don't have pre-planned ideas on how the coalition should operate before bringing in people. When you come together, that's when you decide how it should be done. You know, if I remember back in 1990, I think 1990, was it 96? Where there was a coalition that took place. It was created, and
elections
I think during that period, yes, no, it was towards the presidential election.
Yeah,
2004.
I think,
2004. It was 2004.
I think it was 2004.
It was 2004.
Yeah.
Coalition.
So when Frundi still insisted that he was supposed to sit at the helm, and he created a break. If you notice, the different coalitions that, because if you look the 1992 elections that actually took place, where SEF stood, was accepted, it was because of a coalition.
Yeah, the Union for Change.
Yes,
the Union for Change coalition.
But after that, what happened? Maybe Frundi thought he was the almighty. He has been a good man. We appreciate the work that he did for Cameroon, the advancement he brought towards democracy in Cameroon. But I want to say that if you want to learn, you don't only take the good parts of history, also use the negative aspects to learn. Because of his tight seat position that he must be the head, it broke the entire coalition. And
different political parties were formed, and where did opposition party go to? It became now a fight between opposition parties, and they gave the ruling party a strong sitting position. And now it has become very difficult to dismantle that sitting position of the ruling party. So I think that there is need for a true coalition, yes, but not what we are seeing that is happening right now. And I think that there is need for them to truly strategize. If they really want to win an election, it should take time. They don't build a coalition in a day.
Now, Prince, what really makes a good coalition in your own perspective? As a political reporter, you have seen these political parties come together, sometimes premature, ill-prepared, sometimes with selfish reasons, and they all collapse. What could be the master stroke to make them stick together ahead of elections?
I would want to come back to the 2004 situation. Because I covered Chairman Frundi during those elections, and I had a one-on-one discussion with him about the coalition and how it collapsed. Frundi rightly thought, in my opinion, that they were forcing their leadership down his throat. Because the Adamunda Mjoyas and the rest literally summoned him to come and join them. So he was not part of the coalition from the very beginning. And that was a big mistake, because by then he was the most prominent political figure within the opposition. And the idea that most Cameroonians have, that it was because of a coalition that Frundi almost won in 1992 elections, to me it's not true. Frundi came with a message. He came with a message of change. And Cameroonians were ready for change. And that is why Cameroonians backed him. Cameroonians were not voting because they received instructions from a so-called coalition of the Cantos and the whatever, the people who call themselves intellectuals.
Yeah.
Cameroonians saw a man who took his courage. He launched a political party against the odds. People were killed. He stood his grounds, and Cameroonians saw in him a leader. And that is why Frundi was popular, and that is why he was strong. So for me, if you want to build a coalition, you better go to a person like that who has a following with the masses. As of now, I would suggest it's the young man, Cabral Libi, because whether I would like it or not, he's been there for quite some time. He's young. And what we are talking about the politics of the future. We are talking about the future of a country. Our own generation, we blew it. We have messed up. And I think it is time the young people take their responsibilities. They take their responsibilities and guide the future of the country. Because the future is for them. Some of us, we are just waiting for the 9th hour to bow out, as Honorable Paul Aya bowed out a few days ago. And before I forget, I want to use this opportunity to pay homage to this very great man. And I wrote something, an eulogy to him on Facebook, which is very telling of whom this man was. Most people were building mini-cities in Boya to cash in, to make monies off the young people, because the government failed in providing housing for students, affordable housing. Honorable Paul Aya built an orphanage where he housed underprivileged children. It just shows you who the man was. The people we see now only think about themselves and their pockets. But when you have a man like that who runs an orphanage, it tells you volumes about who he is, morally speaking. So I would advise young Cameroonians to look for such a leader, to look for somebody who represents the future. And as of now, is Cabral Libi. It's strange that the Anglophones, who are supposed to be at the head of change and who legitimately can lay claims to the leadership of this country now, because this country has been managed now for over 60 years by Francophones. And the Fumban arithmetic brought two states together. One has had its opportunities. It is only legitimate. There are people who have been trying to say, no, it's not democratic and this and that. It is very democratic. In neighboring Nigeria, we've seen how zoning, the aspect of zoning brought leadership from areas you could least imagine. The East, for instance, the Southeast,
and the South-South.
East, South-South. They ended up having a president with a Goodluck Jonathan. And it's because of the exercise of zoning. Because President YABADOO had to look for a running mate from the South-South. And unfortunately, he did not end his term. He died, and Goodluck Jonathan became president. So in the aspect of zoning in Cameroon, the Constitutional Council might order every political party that wants to field a candidate to field only Anglophone candidates. And that will help in the process of getting an Anglophone at the helm of this Cameroon. Because whether we like it or not, it is an important debate now with the crisis going on. And it might sort of solve this crisis, because the people who are out there with arms fighting will have no argument if an Anglophone legitimately becomes president of Cameroon. That is my plea.
Just like how Goodluck Jonathan handled the Niger Delta situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, we shall take a short break, and when we come back, we look at the situation of Cabral Libi, whom we just mentioned moments ago, after this break. Honorable Cabral Libi and the Cameroon National Party for and the Cameroon Party for National Reconciliation (PCRN) were also in the news this year following internal wranglings between Cabral Libi and Robert Kona, the founding president of the party. The situation went right to the courts, where in most of the cases, the courts have given reason to Honorable Cabral Libi as the legitimate president, but yet the Minister of Territorial Administration maintains that Robert Kona is the sole and legitimate president of the party. Prince was talking moments ago about looking into the future with Cabral Libi. He has that influence and the following right now, but is Cabral Libi in danger, if we can say so, in politically speaking?
That question is okay. Anyway, let me attempt an answer.
An answer, yes.
Out of truth be told, if you have to understand what is happening with Minat and some of these political leaders, you in fact, you end up just laughing. You see, why we might be considering it to be a joke, or might be even hilarious, I want to say that the internal running of a party does not have anything to do with with Minat.
Minat.
Minat has
the responsibility of either creating or rejecting the creation of that when you come for it, for the creation of a party. It's their job to either sign it and validate it or reject the validation of your party. And once that is done, the internal runnings of that party have nothing to do with Minat. So it is shocking how the Minat at times determines who should be the president of a party or not. That had happened once with Kawala. And then later on he determined who should be the president of PCRN. You see, when I saw his, I don't know if I should call it a communique or order or a decree or whatsoever.
The communique.
I was a little bit surprised. Why? Because before Kona could give Cabral the position of president of the party, there was a sitting down and there were written out terms on how that should operate, that should be. And also, PCRN as a party has statutes, internal rules and regulations. And if you enter in the internal rules and regulations, there's nowhere, I'm not part of PCRN, but at least during that period as a political analyst, I had to do some studies to understand how that party, he came into power. And I realized that they sat down and signed an agreement. And the party does not in any way have any clause in their internal rules and regulations and statutes that says that the founding president remains eternal or remains the president of the party. So, and there is nothing in the statutes that also talk of a founding president. You just talk of president. So whosoever becomes president is the president of the party. So when they agreed in, I think that was 2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Yes, before Cabral ran, they sat down, wrote some agreements how the party will be, the president who becomes president of the party is going to run, and when the next convention is going to take place, if in case there's need for another change. When Cabral called for the convention, we were shocked and surprised that Kona came from somewhere else refusing, and Minat came up with, wow, Kona is the real president of the party. That was out of order. So, if you ask me, I want to say that from what we have seen, it shows that Cabral is in danger. In what way? When I talk of danger, I don't actually mean that
politically, no, his candidacy for 2025.
No, there's nothing. His candidacy he doesn't have a problem. Why? Okay. Because why should I say so? It is not Minat that accepts the documents of who becomes a presidential candidate or not. It's not the job of Minat.
Constitutional Council.
It is a Constitutional Council. Mm-hmm. So there is no way where he will stand up to fight, except there is a hidden agenda somewhere, except that. But if we look at things openly, no. He has a free ticket to become a presidential candidate.
All right, Prince. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problems we have in Cameroon is this very, very academic approach to solving them. You see, in a country which preaches the separation of powers, the Minister of Territorial Administration is part of the executive.
Yeah.
And Cabral has won cases in court, which is the judiciary, which is another arm of government. For me, I think it's a good thing that the administration is visibly against Cabral Libi. It is a good thing for him politically, because if you remember, Cabral had earlier tried to create his own party.
Yeah.
and he gave his papers in, and they were never approved.
That's right.
So the problem now in his PCRN or whatever is like a vehicle and fuel. The party is Kona, and is the vehicle. The fuel is Cabral. So you have a vehicle without fuel, it will not move.
Yeah.
So somewhere down the line, I think it's a good thing for Cabral, and he should remain focused, because it's because of social media that we're discovering lots and lots of things he's been doing in Parliament.
That's true.
You know, the Parliament has as majority the CPDM, and Cabral has been fighting as with the meager 5 or 6 parliamentarians he has, and he has been pushing things across. Thanks to social media, we've been seeing what he's been doing. So for me, it's a good thing for him.
All right, we are now going to look into President Paul Biya in 2024. President Paul Biya's stay in 2024 was marked by the controversial long stay in Europe, following his presence in France to take part in the Normandy celebrations, and later to China for the China-African Summit. After that, no news came out concerning the president, raising lots of concerns, speculations, and so much bad publicity from some quarters. Thereafter, we had a series of communiques from government officials with the Minister, Director of Civil Cabinet at the Presidency, coming to say that the head of state is fine and is doing well in Europe. I would like to put the question to any of you. What do you make of President Paul Biya in 2024, politically speaking?
President Paul Biya, as you said, remains the president of Cameroon in 2024. I learned that you don't celebrate the death of an individual. And secondly, I also learned that Mr. Biya is indeed the lion, as they say he is. So when people said this last time that he was no more, some said all kind of speculations were coming, I was not one of them this time around. I said until I see how
until it's official.
Yeah. So I think it is but normal that a man of his age should have malaise, he should have health issues as well. So going to the hospital is not a problem. And I also think that it is not a taboo for him to visit the hospital. So it should not be an issue for people to talk over. So as long as I'm concerned, until he's not, he's still the president of the republic. So let's wait for 2025 if he can be beaten, if he runs again for election, because we shouldn't.
There are calls for him to stand.
I've been hearing a lot of people actually asking for him to come, and I feel disappointed because it makes me feel like some people don't love him. They really hate him, because I would not permit my grandfather at the age of 92 to sit in fact, to even say lead the family at that age. He should be resting. So when I hear people doing those calls, I just think that they are just greedy, and they are not, in fact, what they are doing is hatred.
But what happens in a country where we have spoken about the opposition, about their lack of vision, selfishness, sometimes not learning to plan things beforehand? In a country like Cameroon, where even the opposition is having a problem. Yeah, it's having a problem.
The ruling party does not only have one person. Mr. Biya is not the only individual that can run a country in the ruling party. So we must not necessarily wait for a new person from an opposition party. We could still have somebody from the ruling party.
Well, so that means we have to wait for the CPDM Congress.
So if we are waiting
to decide that.
Voila. So we should be waiting. Until then, he's still the president of the republic.
Yeah. All right, Prince, what do you make of the rumors and all the statements and the management of the president's absence? You have worked at the Unity Palace and you understand how some of these things can blow out of proportion.
I would say that's where the opposition failed again, by trying to capitalize on such an aspect. For me, the president of Cameroon is 92, and that is the president we voted into office.
Yeah.
And we have to come to terms with his age. There are things he can no longer do because of his physique, but he remains, as the Prof said, he remains the president of Cameroon. And now, President Biya has had, in fact, his whole life has been in administration. And he knows how it works out. He's not the sort of guy you trap with rules like 45 days out of the country or stuff like that. And it's during this last episode that we discovered that nowhere in the Constitution was it written that after 45 days
a vacancy should be declared.
That is it. So for me, the opposition should concentrate on mobilizing their masses and voting President Biya out of office, rather than wishing him death and capitalizing on aspects that have to do with his age. So they should concentrate on mobilizing. When we vote another person into office, then he will become. But as of now, the president of Cameroon is 92. He's an old man, and he remains the president. So it's also an aspect of failure.
All right. Before we go, let's look at the Anglophone crisis in 2024. The Anglophone crisis, of course, continues with deaths that were recorded, fighting that have also been recorded, ghost towns in some parts of the northwest and southwest regions, despite the fact that military speaking, some of the generals, the self-styled generals themselves, have been neutralized, with the death toll also on the Cameroonian military. As we look into 2025, what is your appraisal of the management of this crisis? Some experts say that it's still the status quo, that nothing has changed, and we are almost 8 years down the line.
In reality, nothing has changed.
There's no progress that has been made. I want to say that a crisis like this was, in fact, what is happening right now was never even supposed to exist. If back in 2016, the government officials who were given the opportunity to manage the crisis when it was still a kind of grievances that the people actually showed, if the government did not sit on a high horse and decided to sit with the party, during that time, I think there was a consortium that was created.
Yeah, there was a consortium. They had numerous meetings. But
so if they sat down and discussed, and one party never came like the boss with conditions, this thing would have been dealt with. And if you look at it, even what the consortium brought as proposals, there was no reason for it to be extended. They were supposed to accept those few things. Why? Because they only asked for removal of French teachers from Anglophone classes. Then secondly, they needed, which today has already been done, they needed also the common law, to be respected, system to be respected in ENAM, in the Supreme Court. And so with all that, if they accepted those things without going, using the hard style that they came with, dissolving the consortium, picking their leaders and locking up, that was not the best. And if you look at it, they have maintained the military strategy. You can't solve a problem within yourself with a military strategy. We are not saying that what is happening where young people picked up guns. No, that we condemn with all our energy. They were not supposed to pick guns against the state,
As well as, I think even when they did that, the government was supposed to use a more subtle strategy to deal with this issue. And proposals, which a lot of people presented, I think back in 2019, in the Major National Dialogue, has not been put to play. We claim that special status was given. What is inside the special status has not actually shown anything. We discuss all. In fact, if you look at those things, you end up saying that there is no progress. It is true that there are some window dressing strategies that have been put to place, where they created, they have created disarmament body, which should be able to keep young people with arms. They have been able to create the different laws, bodies that were needed. Bodies that we needed.
But the public independent conciliator.
But the main thing that people, which is still there, the civilians are still suffering. Our people are suffering. As I'm talking right now, there are ghost towns on Mondays, which we never knew that Mondays were supposed to be ghost towns. As we are talking, young people are still being killed. I think last week, I received news that somebody was kidnapped and shot around a church in Northwest province, in the region, in Bamenda. So just imagine all this. How should we live in fear? The economic situation is getting worse and worse. Where is the finance is going to? They are using it to sponsor military strategy, which is wrong. And so I want to say that we have short time to discuss on this. If not, there's much to elaborate on that issue. So I will tell you, there is little or no progress that has been made because the people are still suffering.
All right, one last question before we go. What predictions or projections for 2025 politically? We are entering an election year, Prince.
Yeah, well, I would like to throw in a little bit on the Anglophone thing before I come to your question. I blame the failure of the situation of what we refer to as the Anglophone crisis squarely on the leadership of the Anglophones, or of the Anglophones, basically those in the diaspora. Because you cannot condemn something. You cannot say you want to replace something that is undemocratic, and then you become undemocratic in the process. The leadership made an anthem, they did not consult anybody. They decided on the currency, they did not consult anybody. So most of us at the beginning of this crisis were for the changes that were advocated. But basically, the leadership of the Anglophone crisis has failed. And now, 2025 is capital because it's a year for presidential and other elections. For me, Cameroonians should go in and vote and make their votes count into changing what we are going through. Because what we are going through is honestly a mess.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Prince Gomba Ndele, senior journalist and former Unity Palace correspondent. Thank you very much and Happy New Year. And also to Prof. Marc-Anthony Akumbo, who is a Pan-Africanist writer as well as political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us. Yeah, and wish you all a Happy New Year. And televiewers, that was how we saw Cameroon in the year 2024. We do urge you to keep watching programs on Dash TV. Coming up next on our political roundup will be in the economic domain with Menga. Stay with us.